Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another video. So Leodore has been released for a couple days now, and I've been doing a bunch of testing with him, so I wanted to do a video on him today because I do think he's a very interesting unit, and this may help some people who are considering pulling for him, or if you've already pulled him and are wondering how to build him properly. Some people I've heard have been struggling with him because he hasn't been hitting super hard, but I do kind of want to address that in this video and just show how I've been building him and his performance in arena and normal PvE content. So first, let's get into his base skills. I'm not going to be going over his full kit. If you want to see that, then just check my live stream because I always do that for every single unit. I just want to briefly talk about his skills and how they've been performing for me. So his skill 1, first of all, isn't that great. It does have a weird area to it. It can sometimes hit enemies that you wouldn't think it would hit. So it's a bit weird like that, but it isn't very fast and it doesn't do a whole lot of damage either, so I wouldn't recommend the skill 1 unless it's your last skill and that's the only skill you can use. Then sure, you might as well use it instead of nothing, but I wouldn't recommend to spam that. It's not that great. His skill 2, I do like this a lot more because it does hit hard. It hits pretty hard in arena, and the wide area isn't super wide compared to his skill 3, but it is pretty decent and it can hit a solid amount of enemies. But I wouldn't recommend this as much for waves. For wave clearing, you definitely want to use his skill 3. If you have a skill 3 available, then use his skill 3 and it can probably just clear an entire wave because it's very strong and it has a very wide area to it. So the pull-in effect of his skill 3 isn't that strong, but I don't think it matters that much because it is very wide. My current build, I have him set to auto use his skill 3 at the start of the battle. When he's set on auto, he just uses that and it clears the entire wave most of the time, depending on the stage that you're in and where the enemies are, but this build is nice for farming the event. So with his traits, I quickly just want to mention a bit more about his trait 2. So it says here that when he's firing off from an enemy, then he won't flinch from physical and magical attacks. I think this is very nice, and this is very strong in arena because, as you know, flinching from magic is incredibly annoying, and Prefect of Godmere can't flinch from magic, so that's why she is a great unit still, and she also does a lot of damage. But with Leodore, he cannot flinch from basically every magic as well, but also physical attacks if they're long-range physical attacks. Now, one instance of this where it won't apply for magic is if there's a tank on the enemy team that has Blizzard set, but they walk up to you, and now they're close to you, and then they're going to use the Blizzard. Of course, Leodore is going to get flinched in that scenario, which isn't great, but Leodore could move away, or you can try kill the tank or something, and then you'll be completely fine. But in most scenarios, when an enemy has a mage, or just like a support or someone that's using Blizzard, then Leodore's not going to get flinched from any of that, and I just think that is amazing, especially for arena. It's just so good there, so I do love this part of his trait 2 the most. Now let's have a quick look at his skills and what my current build for him is in PvE. I won't go through every single skill, just the ones that I think that are important. So Fast Brave, I do recommend having this because he doesn't have Auto Brave unless you have his paid armor, which I don't. So 2 SC for Fast Brave is just worth using for sure, so just remember to put this on. Auto Brave, I don't think Auto Brave's worth using because it's just too expensive and it just gives strength at the end of the day. But if you are against a high defense boss, you may want to consider a Auto Brave or something, depending on how long the battle's going for. But even then, I just think Fast Brave's fine for 2 SC, might as well just put that on. No attribute attack race 2 I have because he does require a lot of damage focused skills to hit hard in, arena and PvE, but if you're up against bosses, he struggles against bosses, but against weaker enemies and waves, he doesn't struggle against those in my experience. Pose of Glory and Pose of Honor, I just recommend these 2 skills for basically every physical DPS unit because they're great. I do like that he has Royal Feast because he restores all SCT at the end of a battle, so each wave he gets full SCT. I do like this a lot, it's very nice. Goddess Kiss, since he's a non-attribute unit, I am happy that he has this because you can easily just put on a non-attribute weapon and then put on Honey Elixir or Winry's Apple Pie and make him an SCT support unit. And I do think that could be something that you could do, and this is a easy build you could do for him if you have one of those 2 skills available on your account, but new players won't be able to do that. But if you do have full charge, you could use full charge on him, and that could still be pretty good, but he won't be able to apply that onto other units because full charge can't do that. But it can give him a lot of SCT, and he can get SCT back quickly if, you know, you're doing normal attacks to get the MP back. So here is where I start focusing a lot on damage focused skills, because honestly I don't think he needs much else. He just needs, you know, just all damage really. So this is all I have for PvE, is just, you know, a lot of these skills are focused on damage. I do have a sword equipped. We'll have a look at equipment in a second after I talk about all these skills. You don't need all of these skills. This is just what I'm using at the moment. This isn't like the perfect build or anything, but I do think you should stack as much physical damage skills as possible if you want him to be good against bosses, and if you want him to use him in harder content, then for sure you're going to need the damage. Skill charge 3, I do like this, and this is important for my current build because he's set to auto use his skill 3 when he's on auto. Braver and Berserker is just more damage focused skills, and that's pretty much it. All of it is just focused on physical damage because I do think he needs it, and there honestly isn't really anything else that I want to use on him. Like, yes, I know I could put on Honey Elixir and like Purple Orb and stuff like that, but I don't really need it because I'm just using him to, you know, farm stages easily, and, you know, he can clear waves quite easily with just one skill 3. So I think this build is fine for PvE. He doesn't work that well against bosses, but you could use him if you want to. Now, this is my current equipment. I think this weapon, these clothes, and this accessory down here is probably his best equipment to use, because it does give him more physical damage by quite a bit, and this even has good ailment resistances on this accessory, so I do think this build is pretty good. I only have this accessory because the 3 seconds of SCT allows him to use his skill 3 at the start of the battle. Make sure to remove his skill that gives him a skill stock of his skill 2, because that will stop him from using his skill 3, I think. There is a different accessory you could use if you want to do this same build to auto use a skill 3. You can use this one instead, which you will need to farm to get that, but that is a more accessible option. But you don't need to do this build. This is just what I'm using because I think this build is pretty good for just easy farming. But if you just want to focus on a typical physical damage build, then you can just go for like a different accessory for more physical damage, probably what I would recommend for PvE. But if you want to see my full breakdown of full equipment, then you can just check my live stream because I've got that on there. I do think a sword is recommended to use here. A sword allows him to benefit from more arc traits. That's why I think a sword will be best for him, because he can benefit from certain skills, and we have a lot more sword skill and arc options. So I would recommend this sword if you got it, but there are other options if you have it. But if you want to benefit from Goddess Kiss, then make sure to have a non-attribute sword. So yeah, this is my current PvE build. There isn't really anything exciting here, but let's go ahead and try this out just to see how he's like. So first of all, I'm going to go into the normal stage that I always do, just to try him out by himself, just to see how he performs here. And he does do quite well here, because these enemies are weak, and, you know, he's just a very good unit against this type of content, and this content is just easy. But I will go against one boss in a second. I'm just going to go and fight Leodore because that's funny. Leodore versus Leodore. So if I put it on auto, he's going to use his skill 3, and you can see it does hit every single enemy. It doesn't kill all of them, but, you know, his skill 3, having this type of build, is very good, I think. And you can see his damage is pretty strong, even though it's skill 1. But his damage cap, he'd lose a lot of damage cap when the enemy's close, as you can see. He only does 82,000 there, but when the enemy was far away, he did like 100k instead. So I do think this build is pretty great against enemies like this, and just this will allow you to easily clear story stages. And if you want, you could have a build like this and just auto run story and just get through story as fast as possible if you really want to do something like that, which could be good. Now, let's actually go on to a more difficult stage and show him there just to see his performance in a more, you know, up-to-date, current content for story. So I'm just going to be going with the same thing, him by himself, but I will be using Council of 10 just for the SCT. So let's see how this goes. I know he's not going to hit damage cap here, he's not going to hit that hard because this is a harder stage for sure, and you will need a full team and debuffs and stuff. So this is the Leodore boss. I'm just going to use Council of 10 and then start spamming skills to see how much damage he's doing by himself. My current build, as you know, my current build is focused on physical damage and it's got a lot of physical damage skills. You can see here he's doing, you know, 60k, 30k, 40k. You know, it's not the best damage, honestly. Like, he doesn't do very well in this stage because the boss does have, you know, high damage mitigation and he's got higher stats, so it will be more difficult to clear this stage with just Leodore. But you can make it work technically, because if you have a full team and you debuff the boss with like reducing their defense and stuff like that, then I do believe he can work here, but he isn't the best option because, as you can see, he's not hitting very hard right here. Especially skill 1 is just very weak. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend him against hard stages like this, but this stage isn't super difficult if you've got the right team. Like, if you just have a full team, it's quite easy, but Leodore by himself does struggle against those harder boss stages for sure. Now let's have a look at Arena, because I do want to show him here. This is where I've been using him the most. I'm going to be showing my current build and how I've been running him. I won't show my defense because I don't show my defense ever. I only show my current attacking build because this can help some people if you're thinking of using him in Arena. So my equipment options are pretty similar because I have the same weapon and the same clothes, but I do have these 2 accessories which do help more with damage, and this revive accessory just helps. I like having a revive accessory on my main physical DPS unit. Now his skills are more focused on full physical damage as much as possible, so I went super hard on physical damage here. So Sky High, Megalon, all of the same skills that I was using, but a couple extra skills for just more physical damage. So I have Sharp Eyes, and he also has this version of Sharp Eyes, but both of these stack. So because he has a skill somewhere, this one, that restores 30% of your MP when he revives once, then having Sharp Eyes as well as this version of Sharp Eyes, I do think this works well, because 50% of damage is a lot, and that is a big damage increase, so I would recommend using this in Arena, because he can easily get back MP, and especially if you have Pose of Honor as well, he should have no problem getting MP back from killing enemies. And if you've got a similar build like this, he's going to be doing so much damage. He does struggle against the more tanky enemies, he won't be able to kill those, but he does do very well against sniping enemies because of his skill 3, has a very wide area. So with this current build in mind, let's try him out and see how he's performing. But before I do that, I do quickly want to show recommended arc options because I haven't talked about that yet. I'm currently using Blaze Garden just because I have Renna on my team with all of the mimicry skills and I wanted to use this on someone. So this does help with damage mitigation a tiny bit, but isn't a big deal. It's mostly just the damage is the reason why I'm using it. But there are a lot of arc options, and you know, you can't go wrong with any of them. All you're really looking for is something that increases his physical damage, I think. So obviously you could use Kairos if you want, because this is his banner arc, and if you did manage to get this with Leodore, then you could use this and it will work well for him, but you don't need it because there are other arc options. Soul Blade is great if you have a sword equipped on Leodore, which you probably should. Then you could benefit from this trait to give, you know, Divinity Slayer, which could be good in Arena. You could use that if you want, but there aren't too many Divinity type enemies in Arena. It's not always the best option there. And just anything in general that gives physical damage, like UR arcs, there are a lot of good UR arcs options, but you don't need a UR arc if you don't have one. Just even certain SSR arcs could be good. This arc here I think would be a good option for him because he is a long range damage dealer, and this just synergizes pretty well with him. Gives him strength, less enemy attention drawn -1. I think that's very good because you don't want him to be attacked really. And boost damage based on distance. He's going to be quite far away from the enemy most of the time, so I think that's great. But this also gives a machine slayer effect, so this will help against killing 2Ps, and he can do pretty well against killing 2Ps, so I would recommend that arc. And there are a few more, but I'm not going to show everything. There is one that I was thinking of which you can get free to play, which is Vase. If you have this arc from the story, you could use this because if you're not hitting a weakness, which you won't be because he's not an attribute, and if you're not hitting a critical hit, then he's going to get 45% more damage. So I do think this arc trait could be very nice on him for Arena if you've got it, and if you don't have other better options. But for now, I'm going to be going with Blaze Garden, and let's just spar myself to see how he's performing in Arena. So I'm going to be starting with his skill 3. Let's target Renna, I guess, and use a skill 3 and see how much this does. Yeah, so that did kill Renna, but it didn't kill Claude. Claude is pretty tanky of a unit, so he can struggle a little bit against Claude, but at the start of the battle, you have to remember that Leodore doesn't have any MP, or he has a little bit, so he's not going to benefit from both of those Sharp Eyes skills. He will benefit from those more once he dies, so for instance, what I could do maybe is I could target Guile and use a skill, so then Leodore dies, right, which is fine, and then once he revives, he has a lot of MP now, so now he can use his skill 2, and he's going to be doing a bunch more damage. As you can see, he did kill Claude and the other Leodore, and everyone's dead at the moment, but he doesn't do very well against Guile unless he's flinched or something. Like, can do some damage against Guile, but he's not the best against Guile. Use a skill 3 there, does kill Claude. You can see he's doing some pretty good damage here. And he's not getting flinched from anything unless, you know, he still gets flinched from a counter attack. That's quite a lot of damage. I'm just going to be spamming a skill. Now he dies. Yeah, he dies very easily against Guile for sure. And then, there you go. So, the damage numbers that I'm seeing are pretty strong, if I'm honest with you. He's pretty damn strong of a unit, and I've seen 100k hits. He hit 43,000 that time, and he did most of the damage. I think this is pretty impressive, especially for a unit like this, because he can't flinch from magic. So, I just think this is amazing. Now, let's go against a few other teams to just kind of see his full potential. So let's go against this team. This is mostly a tank-focused team. I'm doing this because I want to show Leodore's damage against, you know, full tanks. So Leodore will not be doing that much damage against this team. If I use a skill 3 right here, he doesn't have any MP, so he's going to do like hardly anything. He just dies instantly because Guile and stuff, the 2P. Yeah, he just struggles a lot against this kind of team, but he can manage to kill 2P eventually, because he can do some damage against 2P and can manage to kill her eventually. Like, she died right now, so he can do something, but he isn't the best tank killer for sure. Just killed 2P there. Yeah, he's definitely strong against 2P, but he can't kill a Guile very well, and he can't kill Gilbert at all. You can see he's doing like 1000 damage at max. It's not very much against Gilbert, and even against Garland it's not that much. Yeah, he's not doing very much against Gilbert. He can't kill a Gilbert. Melee is still the best against a Gilbert, I think. But he can do very well against a 2P, because any non-attribute, any single wield unit can do well against 2P, I think. If I try and target Garland now, yeah, I think he did manage to kill him, or that was Eliza, I couldn't tell, but he can do something, but it's just not that much against tanks. So if you're struggling to kill tanks, I wouldn't recommend using Leodore. I'd recommend like a mage, or just a stronger physical damage unit. He did do pretty well there because he had a lot of MP and they were all groups. He did manage to kill those, so yes, he can do some damage, but I wouldn't recommend him as a solution to tanks because he's definitely not. I think his main role is trying to snipe the backliners, so like sniping the supports and the mages. He does a pretty good job of that because of his skill tree has a very wide area. You can see my maximum damage wasn't very high because most of the damage was from Leodore. It didn't do that much damage against a team like this because, you know, a tank focused team, he's not going to do very well against that. But yeah, you can kind of see how his performance is. He honestly, in my opinion, he does very well in arena, and I do think he's going to rate quite highly because he can snipe the support units, like I've said, and that is pretty good. And what makes him top tier, in my opinion, for arena is not flinching from magic, as long as he's far enough away from the enemy. I just think it's great, and you're going to be seeing a lot of people using him in arena, and potentially guild battles, but I haven't done any testing in guild battles yet, so I can't tell you how he performs in guild battles. But in arena, I can say for sure that he is a very strong arena unit. So overall, I do think he's a very strong unit, and I am glad, I'm happy what they've done with him. I'm glad they made his skills not weak, and they do feel very strong in my opinion. So is he worth pulling? Well, if you don't have a non-attribute unit, which you probably don't, I think he is worth pulling, and I think he's the best unit from this anniversary for sure. Out of Kyle, Ray and Leodore, Leodore is the best unit from this anniversary in my opinion, because we haven't had a non-attribute unit in such a long time, and I can see Leodore popping up in arena a lot of the time, and potentially in guild battles he could show up too. So if you care about PvP, I would recommend trying to get him because I do think it's a strong unit, but he isn't a super meta unit, like compared to 2P or Guile, those types of units, he's not on that end, but I do still think he's going to be a very strong unit for a long time for PvP content. Now, for PvE, it's a bit of a different story because his DPS is quite low, and he isn't that great at doing DPS, but he can help clearing content, and if you're someone that is missing a non-attribute unit, if you want a non-attribute unit, or if you're someone that's completely new, I do think Leodore will be great for your account, but not everyone needs him. If you don't care about PvP, then I would say it's up to you if you want him or not, because you don't really need him that badly, because at the end of the day, non-attribute units aren't required by any means, so that's just up to you in the end. But yeah, I do think he's a very good unit, and I'm happy with what they've done with him. So I'm going to leave it there. If you've enjoyed this video or have anything you want to add or any questions or anything, then just leave a comment, like the video, all that stuff, blah blah, you know. I don't talk about that stuff, but you know. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.